everybody, welcome back to Quality Time. Boy, I'm tired. Okay, so, first into the news. The move from here to the new place with my new office is ostensibly scheduled for late this week, early next week. It all mostly hinges on, how and when we can get the internet shifted over, as well as when my dad can pop up to help us shift a lot of this. But hopefully next week's vlog will actually be coming to you from either the living room or my office, so yay, that'll be great. Let's see, other pieces of news. It's actually been a fairly quiet week. I'm not really too complainy about that. We are ostensibly going fossil hunting this Saturday, so hopefully I'm gonna strap the GoPro to my face and you'll all get to come fossil hunting with me. So that should be a nice piece for next vlog. And then, my third piece of news here, my sleep schedule is entirely messed up. I was asleep, I think, from around 6 AM this morning to about 4 PM today. Fuzz apparently tried to wake me up to go and get breakfast, but that didn't hold very well. Fuzz themselves has been awake for the past 18-ish hours, I think. They're currently playing dailies, and when I finish making this vlog, they're gonna get some sleep. Fuzz has some issues going on which are really messing with their fatigue and energy levels, so naturally their sleep schedule's messed up, and since we happen to share the bed, that means that my sleep schedules are taking a hit as well. But besides all that, I'm managing to stay reasonably stable. Reasonably. The onset of winter always tends to mess up my sleep schedules, but besides that, I have managed to get a little bit more used to the new production pattern, which is just the rate and schedule of how I make, that's a sentence and a half, of how I make videos so they can all go up on time and such. So the start of the month, I try and get all of the secondary block videos done, so that's XCOM, Edgington, and Oddworld, currently. And then just throughout the month, I get more and more of the primary block videos done, because those ones tend to be a lot more close to the release date anyways. So I actually have every single secondary block video already done, and I have had that done for quite some time today. Going straight up to the last update of the month on the 29th, so yay. So now I'm just trying to get ahead with the secondaries. This is not too dissimilar to how I was making videos shortly before we went to MCM, but it's a much more relaxed pace. So I'm not quite as far ahead as I was then, but I am getting quite far ahead, and I'm quite happy about that. One other piece of news is that the Patreon has seen the addition of a new $1 tier called Memory, which doesn't give quite the same benefits as the $5 tier for Forgetfuls, but it does add like a little something. It's like this little minimum wage kind of thing, I guess. Sort of like, you want to support, but if you support less than $5, then you don't really get anything back. Now, you are actually noted, you do actually matter, and you, of course, well, you always matter. Other thing I do need to mention about the Patreon is that it is now my primary source of revenue, so, if it gets to about the 1K tier, which I believe is only about 13, 14 underminers away from being there, I'll be able to open a PO box, and I will also be very, very secure in my livelihood, such that I will not have to worry every month about whether I can pay the bills. So, if you've been holding off on joining the Patreon, now will be a good time. Of course, you won't be able to get access to the Undermine server if you pledge $15 or more until the start of next month, but you will get the warm and fuzzies from me, and one of these days maybe I'll figure out a way how to transmit hugs through the internet. The schedule for this week is that, of course, on Thursday we have Midnight Sticks from 11 PM GMT over at twitch.tv/lyinginbedmod. On Friday we have an Edgington episode where we are working a bit more on the archery range construction. On Saturday we have the World of Madness with Dungeon Maker. We're going to be looking at the next dungeon room there after we've done the corridor, and we also have Dungeons and Dragon Hats, quite appropriately, from 9 PM GMT over at twitch.tv/thedragonhat. On Sunday we have an Oddworld episode where, having finally met Alf, we now get to play around with his mechanics, which means I have to actually, like, figure out what they are. And on Tuesday, we have a Night of Fangs episode, where we're gonna be... I actually don't know how much I can say, though, without giving you spoilers. And hopefully a Yogg-Dwarf's Life. There wasn't one yesterday, because I was actually in attendance of my grandfather's birthday. He is the ripe old age of 80, not that you'd know it looking at him. So it's been an age since I last saw my granddad, or indeed most of my family in Darlington, so I had to pop back and see them, which meant a lot of fun explaining what a content producer is and how I'm working now and like what that there is more than two genders, which is always an interesting thing to do, try and explain to your relatives. Then on Wednesday we have an XCOM with an escort mission involving a shiv, so yay. That's always fun. It's nice to get the Goliaths out. I like the Goliaths. I like the shivs. The mechanical units of XCOM always tend to like get me in the warm and fuzzies. Okay, so on to the questions. As always, questions for this lying answers segment are drawn from the comments section of the preceding vlog. So if you have a question you want to ask me, then drop it there and I'll see if I can answer it. Our first question of the day comes from Tank 1900, which I think is something like 16 or maybe 17 odd years before tanks were actually invented. But yeah, what is the release schedule for Night of Fangs? Night of Fangs is a primary block series, which I guess means this is a good time to explain that. Secondary blocks are videos that I can usually film way in advance without any difficulty, and they are always in an alternating pattern, so it's A, B, C, A, B, C. That's XCOM, Edgerton and Ed, and Oddworld at the moment. And then primary block ones are things usually involving multiplayer, usually involving people I have to wrangle schedules on that I can't necessarily get on a regular schedule. They're also usually my more popular videos, but those also are more erratically arranged based on how I plan things at the start of the month, but they're usually in between. You'll usually get at least two of a given primary block in a month, but hopefully I try and get more. It's just the way things work. With Night of Fangs, it involves wrangling quite a few people across quite a few time zones, so it tends to be the one that I have to plan much further in ahead. It's more erratic, I know. Maybe at some point I need to sit down and change that up a bit so that I may delineate the blocks a bit more, but that's how it goes for right now. So there isn't a set schedule, so to speak, for Night of Fangs, but it is a primary block series, so you can look at it every other day. Every other update, you'll probably find something there. Joseph Head asks, how did you make the Undermine spawn area? I generated the world, which involved getting the terrain gen perfect, so that the world actually built up to the build limit. And then I went into MC Edit, which is a Minecraft world editing tool, and I basically just went down with an airbrush and dug down as far as I thought I needed to go, and eventually I hit a decent cavern, filled it up to a degree with water, and then just built my tree inside of it. So that was how the air tree chamber was made. You could do it with TNT, but TNT is a lot more imprecise, especially when you have a big line. It tends to go in all sorts of directions. You could do it manually, but it would take you an absolute age. I think I built the air tree chamber somewhere in the region of a day or two. So personally, I would recommend using MC Edit. Bumblebee Flower asks, with the new place, are you and Fuzz going to decorate for the holidays? Hopefully? We could try. The main problem isn't so much the desire or whatnot to decorate for the holidays as, we don't really have too much in the way of storage space, so where would the Christmas decorations and such go the rest of the year, is my main question for that. So hopefully we'll see. I'm hoping to do some more quality time vlogs from, like, the common area, the living room of the new place. So maybe you'll get to see. We'll find out. We'll find out. Silly Jude asks, is it true you helped build bits of Yoglabs and the Flux Castle? Ooh. Short answer is yes. With Yoglabs, I helped with the big reactor build episode that they did. You can see my work mostly inside of the different, especially the force field walkway that Simon goes down to. But I was also the chief and sole architect over the pink room, the backup generators, which were a lot of fun to design, and are actually a functional system, although they don't quite look at it, I admit. With the Flux Castle, I mostly worked on smaller details in the interior because I didn't have too much time at that particular point of the year. I think Gar worked mostly on the big looming outside tentacles. If you look at the interior of the main courtyard, you can see some overgrown sandstone blocks. That was my idea of the Naga skeleton. I also did a bit for the Jaffa quest. Was it? No, I think it might have been the Moon quest by that point, I think. The sort of dilapidated Jaffa factory. I was the chief architect of the top level of that, the penthouse with the witch encampment, as you can probably guess from the fact that there is more or less Witch Lang's outfit just on an armor stand nearby. I was also the person that wrote the actual Witch's Journal. Very recently, in Flux Buddies 2.0, episode 126, I want to say, I helped out with the vampire attack, and even more recently, with episode 152, I think, I was the person that put Billy back and made him immortal, and I also wrote the book. So, yeah, I help out a fair bit. Generally speaking, when I've been involved in a build, you can look around, and if you'll find a little, like, label with a waystone in it, that's usually my signature on a build. So you can find me in a few different places. Nico25851 asks, why do you use gender-neutral pronouns instead of he or she? I started using this in Witch of the Woods, because it was a common headcanon that I kind of endorsed that my character in that was gender-neutral. It's used a lot in the Sunless series nowadays, because, let me see, Fuzz is agender. Dave recently came out himself as gender fluid, and we have a lot of people who aren't cis, who aren't their birth-assigned gender on the server. This was entirely accidental. It's not really, like, something we intended, but it just came out that way. In fact, I think me and Dex might be the only people who are cis on the entirety of Sunless. So it's generally a lot easier for me to just use gender-neutral pronouns than to keep track of everybody's different pronouns. My memory, unfortunately, is not very good, so I would mess it up a lot more if I tried to keep track of everyone's pronouns. I know that's not a perfect situation, so I do try, but also, I generally don't tend to specifically know the gender identity of people I'm talking to a lot of the time. I know them more by usernames than anything else, so it's a more reasonable safeguard toward, like, against offense to use gender neutrals. If you didn't know, there is actually, I believe, somewhere in the region of 8 different genders, possibly more. Gender identity is a very complicated thing, and it's kind of comical that we keep trying to shove it into a binary, but humans tend to like binary, so I guess that makes a degree of sense. But yeah, I personally use he, him, because I am actually cis, male, but for a lot of people on the internet, I tend to think it's best just to be on the safe side and go by gender neutral. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Quali-Tea Time. Do let me know any questions you have, and hopefully the schedule will not be too difficult. Will not be too subject to change in this coming week. But we'll see. It's going to be a busy one. Catch you next time.